had a special episode of Sundays with Subscribers yesterday where we spoke with a man named John Cameron. John Cameron is from Port Orchard, and he has the unfortunate label of being a J6er. So John went to, in fact, the first political event he ever attended in his life was the Stop the Steal rally in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, 2021. Imagine that. Very first political rally you're ever involved in. And he did end up entering the U.S. Capitol that day. He didn't commit any acts of violence. He claimed he never saw acts of violence in the door that he went in. So he, for the crime, which would eventually be identified as unlawful picketing in the U.S. Capitol, he faced federal charges. He eventually pled guilty to picketing. He had to live in a halfway house for 30 days. He lost his marriage of nearly 20 years. Wife was being ostracized by people in her life. She just couldn't deal with it anymore. His father and stepfather no longer talked to him. In fact, it was his father's stepson who turned him in. Lost his business, completely went under. His name was everywhere, couldn't get business, couldn't get leads, was left financially destitute, and was left kind of a societal pariah. All for the crime of, and again, I've said that for J6ers, I feel a certain way if you assaulted a police officer. That's not what John Cameron did. Yet he really felt like the full weight and investigatory power of the federal government was levied against him for the simple act of entering the U.S. Capitol and not hurting anybody. So John, he gave us his first interview after getting a pardon last week from President Donald Trump. He is now a pardoned J6er. It's an hour and a half. I highly recommend watching it, but I wanted to play just a clip of it for you today. Is there anything the pardon does for you? Do you care about the pardon?
The biggest thing the pardon did was get the rest of the J6ers out of prison. There were no one got a fair trial. So there's a do-over portion of this, right? So you couldn't sift through who, legitimately assaulted a police officer when there were 500 who were in there for assault because they blocked, I will just say this because I know, they blocked a cop's fist with their face and they were charged with assault. They stopped the baton from beating the girl next to them. They were charged with obstruction and assault and sent to prison for years.
Though in videos I've seen, there are people who assaulted police officers there. I've no doubt in my mind. I'm a firm supporter of law enforcement. So is it worth it then that those people get to ride this pardon in order to get the other ones out expeditiously?
So like I said, I went to the Blackstone ratio.
Yeah.
Like I kind of was like, I was the same way. I was like, we really need to look at case by case because what if?
Yeah.
And then you can't. You have to. There was too much. And what will come out of some of the violence, the real violence that we is it? I'll just say this: did you hear the story about the J6er who firebombed the cop car and destroyed them?
Well, no.
And them and their accomplice got 6 months in prison and probation.
I didn't, because I'm assuming that wasn't a J6er. It was probably Antifa.
It was BLM.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it was a J6er, they would have gone to prison for 1 million years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what I've said, is the hypocrisy is astounding.
Yeah. So that is a part of why everybody has to be free. Right.
I'll just ask you two more things. What would your message be to Donald Trump if you had a chance to meet with him?
Well, he has one of my letters. So I was part of a J6 coalition that, sent him letters. That is a good question. First, I would thank him, right? I would thank him for his undying service to the country and almost being killed and still moving forward. That's what I would say most, because that fighter is a heart and it should inspire the rest of us to take action and move forward in the face of adversity. That's the biggest one. Since we're wrapping up, I want to talk about that political nature of what now I have learned in coming out the other side, right? So going from a naive, new, conservative who's like, I need to take action and do something. You and I met at a local GOP.
Yeah.
I was the state committee man of that GOP, and I believe I am the only J6er who had ever attained the rank in a county of state committee man. Mm-hmm. And that means I was one of 3 people in a county who brought their voice to the state. But I did that because I came out of J6 and it was time to do something again. There's no J6, so what do I do?
Yeah.
That same feeling that I talk about, that battle I had within myself of good versus evil, that caused me to need to take action. Had there been somebody like me to put their arm around and go, hey, if you're feeling like you need to take action, all you really need to do is go wave a banner for this candidate, make some phone calls or door knock, and it will give you the action items that you need to solve that inner rumbling. You'll be able to sleep the sleep of truth. And I would have gone, I wouldn't have needed to go because I would have had a platform and an outlet for this need. So what I did for the last 2 years was recruit patriots to my local GOP. And a J6er is easily able to do that because I'll say, come with me. And we will fight for all these things that we want, and I will fight as hard for you as I did for election integrity and First Amendment rights on January 6th that sent me to prison. And I'm not joking, and this is a real fight. But come on, we can do it together. And you also have that, like your path, right?
Yeah.
As a journalist is fraught with obstacles and angst and hate and, right? But you're bringing the truth because the truth is more important to you than all these negative things. And in the end, it wins out. And that path is not that one of least resistance, right? But it's that same sort of path that has caused you to go, okay, you're doing your best for conservatism, for bringing the truth forward, and, you know, going from mainstream media to an independent journalist, you know, huge change of scary, what's going to happen. And there's more to come. I believe there's even more greatness for you because that voice, that independent decentralization of media voice right now, you probably know by viewers and readerships is becoming more and more important because the corporate media is becoming less and less important.
Yeah. You kind of almost brought me to my last question. It's a silly question because it's a total hypothetical. But you mentioned, had you been engaged in these other ways, you know, you might not even have gone to DC. If you could go back, knowing what you know today and what it would cost you, would you still do what you did?
It's a good question. I used to say no. Okay? I used to say no.
Which would be an understandable answer.
Yeah, I used to say no if it meant not losing my family, not going to prison, not losing my business, all of that. I'll say if I knew what I knew now, that the full might and power of the government would come to bear on one little American like me to run me into the ground, to destroy my finances, my family, to destroy everything, I wouldn't have done it. Now, I may be changing my mind with the pardon. The pardon might have made me change my mind on that. My marriage may have ended regardless, right? I think it's at this point more important to bring the truth and to do what I think is right in the face of adversity. But now I'm pardoned, so I've even thought of that. It has begun to change my mind.
So that's my conversation with John Cameron, who is now a pardoned J6er from Washington State, one of roughly 30 J6ers from our state who received a pardon from President Donald Trump. You know, it was a 90-minute conversation, really interesting. I mean, he's very thoughtful, obviously. And you know, my opinion on the J6 pardons is nuanced. As I told him there are absolutely people who assaulted police officers. Now, I think everyone should get a fair trial. Everyone's constitutional rights should be respected. And I think that's part of the reason why it was a blanket pardon. because it's like, how long is it going to take for each of those individual cases to be reviewed and for that determination to be made? But I never want to water down some of the things that happened on January 6th, because I wouldn't want them watered down when it's Antifa in Seattle, or when it's the pro-Hamas people terrorizing campuses, or whatever it is. We have to come to this morally correct place. But there's no doubt in my mind, I mean, all the things that John Cameron lost in his life for the crime of, during his first political outing ever, entering the U.S. Capitol, not hurting anyone, not breaking anything, to be sent by a federal judge to a halfway house, to lose his marriage of 20 years, to lose his business, to lose friends, to lose other family members who'll never speak to him, who called him a white supremacist online. All these things, ask yourself, is that justice? Is that commensurate with the crime that he committed that day? And I think a reasonable person has to say no. You can watch that entire interview with John Cameron by becoming an Undivided subscriber. It's up now. You can go to undividedpod.com, and click on support the show, and that'll open up access to all those Sunday episodes for you.